Mr. Meow, hoarse from singing in an unusual way, gazes through his neon cat mask at the Tesla Spirit transceiver.
Just as families used to gather around the radio in the 1930s to hear dramas played out. In many, perhaps most ways, nothing like that at all.
The spirit coming through the radio has a faraway voice like A, a ventriloquist's dummy shut inside a suitcase. B, a ghostly wolf crying a mournful dirge. C, someone hypnotized. That's not what Mr. Meow was thinking, but he can be inscrutable. The spirit voice seems to be saying,
I know where we are going. You will be able to make progress, even though it seems dark all around you.
Mr. Meow enters. A, what did you say? Mr. Meow. Nothing. Did you just fail to reduce vinegar again? Mr. Meow. Yep. Mr. Meow. What went wrong this time? Mr. Meow. I was just fingering that old newspaper headline, the one that inspired our moniker, a word of unknown origin. Mr. Meow. I guessed as much. I could hear the rustling of paper over the spirit radio static. Mr. Meow. Before I mention the grandfather clock that materialized wherever I just came from, take a look at this bit of weirdness. It's the tricky solution to how to link a pierced heart, skeleton key, and Cupid's arrow. But what's the purported message? Mr. Meow. Yes, encountering the solution to last week's puzzle without having seen last week's puzzle can be tantamount to contemplating a yantra, as if it's a mystical or at least symbolic thought form, encouraging meditation and perhaps even exerting occult influence by cosmic power. Mr. Meow. That's what I was thinking. Mr. Meow. But what's this about a grandfather clock materializing wherever you just came from? Mr. Meow. That's just it. A grandfather clock materialized wherever I just came from. Perhaps we can record its mysterious tickings and chimings into a form of dance music. Mr. Meow. Great idea, though not such a new one actually. The pioneers of programmed music were of course the clockmakers of Milan, Italy in 1335, whose mechanized tick-tock rhythms chimed in at 60 beats per minute. Let's go there now. Mr. Meow. To Milan in 1335? Mr. Meow. Well, first to the materialized grandfather clock. The face of the materialized grandfather clock seems divided into 4 sections, as if revealing the solution to a puzzle. There's room enough for both Messrs. Meow and Meow to step inside snugly, recalling those halcyon college days of the 1950s with the sporadic fad of phone booth stuffing. And though Wikipedia claims that the fad was passé by the end of 1959, Mr. Meow naturally found evidence that it perpetuated at least through 1989. Mr. Meow. We could just stay in here. It's not like I have anything else on my plate. Mr. Meow. Speaking of plates, I'm reminded of the pyramid of fruit that was actually a star that predated the food pyramid by 74 years. I actually have the diagram. As lavishly set as the banquet table is, it seems to be missing at least 3 objets de silverware. Can you identify the absences? All this flatware reminds me of that 1894 drawing of a fork and spoon tied together, locked in combat. Perhaps it's because Silverware, anagrammatically, were rivals. Mr. Meow. Indeed, they obviously relive wars. And what an unlikely visual echo of the diagram with Cupid's arrow piercing the heart and bending through the skeleton key. Does it all mean something? Mr. Meow. What better place for synchronicities than inside a materialized grandfather clock? Mr. Meow. None whatsoever, my good sir. Hey, what's this pinned to the wall? Speak of synchronicity, it's a crossword puzzle with a cat tuning into a radio antenna. Very Neon's Gone Mad. Mr. Meow. This chiming sounds so much like music to my ears. Speaking of which, why do we do what we do? I mean, what's really going on with the clockwork music? I remember how the newspaper headline inspired the name Neon's Gone Mad, yet I'm not sure why it did exactly. And what's with the cat masks? When did all this really begin, even? If we could trace it back to the beginning, perhaps we could understand it. Mr. Meow. If it's true that there's technically no such thing as the past or the future, we may be out of luck. Neon's Gone Mad may be akin to the order of the alphabet, being the way it is because that's just how things are in the eternal present. We're here because we're here. Having said that, if this cabinet of the materialized grandfather clock is actually a time machine, we might be able to shift into the present moment that saw the genesis of Neon's Gone Mad. Mr. Meow. Activating this time machine must have something to do with finding the right balance. I wonder what this small clock face is doing here inside the cabinet. It has no hour or minute or second hand, but rather one big hand that seems to bisect the face. Could it be that the clock face can be halved so that the sum of numbers in each half will be exactly the same? Mr. Meow. From the sounds of the clock mechanisms now, I think the time machine feature's been activated. Perhaps we should weigh the pros and cons of going through with this. Vision. Mr. Meow. I guess we've converted the cons into pros. Do you think those buttons there control the time machine? Mr. Meow. Very likely. I think I see why the numbers are arranged that way. It's like seeing the answer to a number puzzle whose debut one missed. If this is the answer, what's the question? Mr. Meow. Now that the buttons are all glowing, I'll punch in a year. Mr. Meow. Thank you, because in these delightfully intimate quarters, I can't quite reach the buttons myself. Hey, I hear a voice coming through my pocket Tesla Spirit radio. I wonder whether the voice will guide us in any way. A spirit voice clearly says the phrase, water hole. Mr. Meow. Water hole? As in a tide pool? The spirit voice then says, water pole. Mr. Meow. Hole, pole, the clues are rhyming. Mr. Meow. A geyser. The spirit voice then says, water roll. Mr. Meow. A whirlpool. The spirit voice then says, water stroll. Mr. Meow. A brook. The spirit voice then says, water knoll. Should be. Mr. Meow. A wave. The spirit voice then says, water gold. Mr. Meow. Oasis. The spirit voice then says, water mole. Mr. Meow. Platypus. Mr. Meow. What on Earth's invisible twin could platypuses have to do with anything? Mr. Meow. Let's see. Platypuses is an anagram of pussy plate. You spoke earlier of having nothing on your plate, which took us to that banquet table with the missing silverware. And the word pussy, of course, conjures images of a lap where one's animal familiar purrs. So the spirit voice is certainly keeping to the theme, if somewhat obliquely. Mr. Meow. Shut up, something has popped up onto that screen there. The screen says answer is 1, as it shows 3 rows of 8s with a 7 in the 7th place. Then it says answer is 5, as it shows 3 rows of 2s with a 9 in the middle position. Then it says answer is 8, as it shows 3 rows of 1s with a 6 at the top middle. Then it shows 4 rows of 4s and asks what the answer is. Okay, with all that settled, it feels as though we're shifting through time, presumably to the year you punched in as opposed to being lost in time. The neon strands of our cat masks are pulsing as if the electrical field is transmogrified. Mr. Meow, thank you for using a word of unknown origin. I punched in a year so very long ago, from before we called ourselves Neons Gone Mad and before we donned cat masks. It's also before we acquired the Tesla Spirit Radio, though radio voices yet figured into our recordings. Except for all the sounds of music, we might call our landing point the Silent Now. So dread. Oh no! It's precursors to Cthulhu and the Flying Spaghetti Monster from 1895.
Neon's gone mad around the bed, deftly sounding daft and unsound, dispelling curses, a godsend, minimal maxim sound profound.
Or lie in a bed with an IV in my arm.
Listen to this golden moment just before the rain. Take it easy. Listen to this golden moment just before the rain. Hear the leaf that's gently gliding, the cardinal's hushed refrain. Stand upon this precipice, the point where language falls away. Words should be like glass transparent, windows seen right through, leaving just the poet's meaning, were the glass removed. Here on the horizon's edge, the vagueness of destiny, conclusions and beginnings coexist in the silent now. The corner of this world upon your map plainly shows you how. Listen for the pause in music, the stillness in the dance, calligraphic circled spaces, emptiness enhanced, thread through the needle's eye, and so on ad infinitum. Conclusions and beginnings coexist in the silent now. The corner of this world upon your map plainly shows you how. Conclusions and Beginnings coexist in the silent now. The corner of this world upon your map plainly shows you how. Here long enough to notice life is all in jest. If you refuse to verbalize it, you can't be outguessed. Weave intention with compassion. A sutra is a stitch in time. The predicate and the antecedent are silently understood. I'd spell them out in a wide vocabulary if words only could. Conclusions and beginnings coexist in the silent now. The corner of this world upon your map plainly shows you how.